Hello, my fine friends. Welcome back to Destination Discourse. I'm your host, Stuart Butler, joined today with Adam Stoker of Avalon. I don't know. I was
Man,
struggling today. I didn't know. I was going to compare you to animals. I was going to compare you to like characters in Star Wars. I was going to do all kinds of things. Now I'm just like making up places.
yeah, I'll be honest, the way you started the sentence, hopes got super high. And this is in marketing in general, when you set the expectations too
Yeah.
high, and then the experience is kind of a loser. You lose trust permanently,
All right,
both
we'll do
with
it again.
your
All right.
audience. Okay, all right.
Welcome back to Destination Discourse. I'm your host, Stuart Butler. I'm joined today with Adam the Loser. Is that what you said? That's all I heard.
It's better than what you had on the first
Okay.
run. I mean, at least
Okay.
this one was on brand.
Adam, we got a guest today. We got a guy that, to say I was stalked is an understatement. This gentleman, no, he has an amazing name, but our origin story is pretty cool. He came up to me at a recent event and said, I recognized your voice and I'm a Desti. And so I'm like, wow, we actually have real fans in the real world. And so
Did my
welcome,
mom tell you about the show?
maybe so welcome to the show, Christian Mengel, and not the app, right? But the person, Christian Mengel. How are you,
The
Christian?
person, yeah, the person Christian Mingle, and your mom's a lovely lady. She had all kinds of nice things to say about the show.
You guys
Um,
didn't meet on Christian Mingle, right?
we did not, no, no. It was a tourism conference, so she's a hardcore listener for sure. She knows her stuff.
There's too many jokes I want to say right now,
It's
but I'm
okay.
not.
I've heard them. It's a running joke. Yeah, everybody I've met in tourism, or everybody I haven't met, if they've heard like, oh, have you met Christian Mingle yet? Like his name is a dating website.
That's
And there are people that don't believe. I've had to take photos with people who are like, "Can you hold up your name badge so someone in my office believes that I met a Christian Mingle?"
that's amazing. So
So
Christian is with St. Joseph CVB, and he we were chatting at the recent STS conference, and he came with a really interesting topic that I hadn't really given any thought to. But we're gonna get into that in a second. But before we do, Kristen, I know you're excited about this as being a Desti and part of the destination, but it is that time
It is.
for the greatest segment in all of destination marketing. It is time for Stu's News. All right, I'm good.
I'm not.
Adam, it's been a few weeks since we recorded, and I gotta tell you, I didn't miss it. I didn't miss the jingle. I missed the recording. I missed
The
the
Desties did,
conversations.
Stuart. The Desties missed it.
Well, but they didn't miss it because we still publish every week, even when we don't record every week. We'll stack up a few and then we'll sort of publish them.
Christian,
So
what's your take on the jingle?
it's I love it. It sticks with you.
Yeah.
You can't forget it once you get going. I will say it was a different experience for me here because I primarily listen to you guys on Spotify just because I commute and I drive and that's my headspace that I like to get in. So I had not seen like the visual little rocket ship.
Yeah.
mhm.
So this was a whole new experience. Like it hit
Very
two different
important element.
sensories for me. So.
Now, do you
You,
listen at multiple speed? Do you listen at single speed or double speed or?
I listen at that natural, just normal play speed. And I know
Okay.
that drives some people crazy because it's
Yeah.
so low, for people that like to consume and consume. But I like that conversation level. And I think I told you this, Stuart, when I heard your voice. I think that helped me recognize like that's the voice I've heard because it was at that exact same speed that I'm used to
hmm I
hearing
didn't
it.
sound like a chipmunk. Yeah, that
No,
that
yeah.
makes sense. All right, Adam. So let's talk about this. Is your Stu's News today?
yeah.
So let us have it.
Yeah, so I found it really interesting. You and I have talked a lot about how the equation for marketing is changing, and we've talked about how the new currency in marketing is attention. And we used to look at the marketing funnel as awareness, consideration, and purchase. And what we've kind of seen is that getting attention is kind of the most important thing. And attention is different than awareness. Awareness, people know who you are, right? But attention means you've actually captured their focus in some way. They're paying attention to you. And then the mistake that a lot of people make is to try to funnel that attention immediately through to purchase. And so the marketing equation, as I see it today, which I know you actually have an additional thought on, but I'm going to describe it in the way I said it in my LinkedIn post first. And that's that attention plus trust equals marketing success. And I think that a lot of people make the mistake of as soon as you get the attention, you try to sell them something. But if you can generate attention and then earn their trust, and what you're actually selling is trust, and the product will sell itself after that point. And I want to give you an example before we discuss it. I found this realtor, and it's funny that I'm even saying this because how many of us use realtor case studies as marketing that we're going to look at? It's like, oh, she put a sign out front, great, that's great. But what this realtor does is something completely unique. She and her name is Brianna Banachiski, and I'm sorry if I messed that up,
Totally
but
butchered it.
her handle on TikTok is at Tampa underscore Bree. That's one E, BRE. So at Tampa underscore Bree. And she does these reviews of the homes that she's listed, and they are the most deadpan, brutally honest, hilarious reviews that she does of these homes. And you can get her walking through these homes, and we'll put her handle in the show notes here so that people can go look. But they are so entertaining because it's just so brutally honest. She'll make jokes about your mom as she goes through the house. Like, I can't even really describe it without. And should I play the audio from one of her videos just so we can get an idea? Would that be
Sure.
helpful?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, let's do it. This is her pinned review right here. It's in St. Pete, Florida.
You guys are gonna hate me. This house is $1.3 million. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, located in the pink streets of St. Pete. Please share this with your rich friends. I'm gonna share it with the neckbeards in my DMs who keep offering me money to see pictures of my feet. Joke's on you. I have athlete's foot. I'm way too poor to be in this house right now. Seriously though, when I was in elementary school and they would have those canned food drives, they'd be like, Brianna, why haven't you brought in any cans? I'm like, these are going to my house. Write my initials on the top of the can. I bet it ends up in my pantry. Do you think rich people sit here and talk about how rich they are? Honey, I think we should buy a new vacation home. But darling, the interest rates are over 6%. Who cares? Oh, you're a hoot. Bring me more wine and Xanax. Did you guys ever eat struggle meals as a kid? My favorite one was
So
mixing.
I think that probably gives you
Yeah,
the
you get the
idea,
tone.
right?
You know what's interesting is she's not really sort of dogging on the house, right? She's sort of just being playful, which I think playfulness is an underutilized tactic in advertising. It reminds me a lot of the do you remember the Oslo
Yeah,
campaign? That
yeah,
was, I think the campaign was called Is It Even a City?
yeah,
And they basically were very deadpan, talking about very nonchalantly about these sort of mundane things about Oslo, and it was sort of self-deprecating, and it was very effective. But yeah, I sort
yeah.
of like it. So what's your
Let me
let's
let
talk
me
about
ask
your
you a
formula too.
question real
Yeah,
quick before we get into the formula. If you had to guess, and Christian, maybe I'll throw this to you. If you had to guess how many views that video that I just played has, what would you say?
7.
2 million.
So we've got the under at 7, the over is at 2 million. 2.9 million views and
Yeah,
261,000 likes on that
yeah.
video reviewing that house.
She's getting a lot of attention, right? And she's been doing it for a while, I would assume, right? There's an
Absolutely.
accumulation. She's built an audience, many of whom probably aren't in Tampa, but they watch her for entertainment value, not for home shopping, right?
And we have to compare this to how realtors have historically done their business, right? Because when
Mhm.
you hire a realtor, what you're normally doing is paying 3%, and that's not counting the 3% that's going to go to the buyer's agent, but let's just say
Mhm.
3% that you're paying to this realtor to put a sign out, to maybe stand there for a couple hours on Saturday and offer
Upload
cookies
you
to
to the
people in an
MLS.
open house,
Yep.
upload you to the MLS. This person's going to get you 3 million views on your house. And you start to look at that and go, wait, all of a sudden that 3% feels totally worth it. And that's because she is leveraging media in today's media landscape.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
I like it a
yeah,
lot. And I think we've seen TikTok stars from every industry, right? From mechanics to beekeepers and everything in between, where you can turn the most mundane job into entertainment if you have some creativity and you have some fun with it. So it's still bewildering to me how straight-laced and boring so many travel or destinations social campaigns are, because we have one of the most fun jobs in the world. We are selling one of the most fun, enjoyable products in the world, and yet we play it safe. I think we are increasingly trying to take risks and do more creative things on our social content.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of people say, well, we can't be influencers. And a lot of people would have said, oh, nobody's going to care what a real estate agent has to
Right.
say. But
Hmm.
creativity is the difference. And
Right.
she found her zone of creativity that gets attention. And the one thing I can say is the volume of her posts has increased because she's getting more listings as a result
Hmm.
of the audience that she's built.
She's probably also making more money on the social content than she is from selling the houses at this point,
She
right? At
probably
some
is at
point,
this point.
it's like the people, like one of my weird sort of enjoyable indulgences is I watch these people that do yard transformations on, like they'll go and take an overgrown
Yes.
yard and mow it and transform it, and they don't even charge people to do it because they're making all their money now on the content side.
Yeah.
So yeah, so let's talk about your math equation. So say it again for the audience.
So attention plus trust equals marketing success.
Okay.
And I actually, in my LinkedIn post, I didn't even put marketing there. I just put success because the reality is if
Hmm.
you can get attention and use that attention to get trust, you're going
Hmm.
to have success one way or another. Like
Yeah.
you said, even she's probably making more money in the views on the videos than she is from selling the actual houses. I mean, if you can get attention and get people to trust you, there's a variety of different ways you can have success.
Yeah. So I would look at it a couple of different ways. So there's an old phrase in sales, right, which is people will do business with people they like and they trust, right? And it's
Know, like, and
similar.
trust. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think on the equation, if I look at it just as a math equation, I say this plus this equals that, then what you're saying is one of those could be zero and it would still equal a positive, right? But you can't have. So my initial reaction was, well, it should be a multiplication, right? Awareness times trust equals success. But then I sort of step back. I'm getting really nerdy here. But if I think about it more of a logic statement, like an and or an or statement, if it's more of a, instead of the plus being an addition, but it's a combination. So if I say awareness and trust equals success, then so in the 5 minutes since you told me about this equation, I've sort of come 360 to where
Yeah.
I like it. But I think you got to break down what does trust mean? Like, how do you gain trust? Like, for someone like that, consistency is important, right? Trusting that I'm going to continue to get, maintaining a level of standard of entertainment is going to be
Yep.
important, right? So there's
Yep.
there's factors that go into building that trust that she has really done, and I feel like sometimes as destinations we struggle to maintain that consistency in cadence or in quality of product, and we try to shoot a lot of different things at the world without consistency, and that's where we sort of don't build the trust, or we try to be overly optimistic or propagandize, or we're sort of Pollyanna about things, and we're
Uh-huh.
not necessarily authentic in the true sense of the word.
Yeah, I mean, she was making fun of the people that are rich enough to look at that house, right? Like she was
Hmm.
very authentic and also didn't try to hide any component of it. Christian, I'd
Hmm.
love to know your thoughts on the equation, on
Yeah.
this realtor that we've highlighted here. I'm curious what your reaction is.
My actual thought is I imagine if you're in Tampa, you probably know who she is, right? I mean, especially if you've ever searched for a house or a homeowner, home buyer, like that, there's a pretty wide demographic that would get those clips, especially once, friends and their inner circles and their neighbors start sharing that stuff. Like if you're in Tampa, you probably know who she is. So my thinking is, and she probably realizes this too if she's established this kind of following, but the amount of power that she probably has with the city in actually making changes for home buyers and home sellers, like with code enforcement and things like that, like zoning, that she's the kind of person that if you're the city with Tampa Bay, like you do not want to miss her up with the momentum she has in terms of bringing attention to Tampa Bay. So she could really like open up some big conversations in terms of just changing the housing environment in a destination
Mhm.
just because of her following.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when you have an audience and you have influence and you have power, right? You have clout, and so
Yeah.
for sure. I wonder, I'd love to talk to a friend of the show who's been on before, Patrick Harrison, about her. Is she on his radar? Have they considered like partnering? Because it would be fun to see her take on doing a destination commercial, right? In that
Yeah.
same vein on
We'll
her,
have her
like,
review the different assets of a destination, right?
yeah,
Like
go
have her hit the
around and do.
restaurants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's where my head went here. Like, could we do the same thing where we're sort of brutally honest, but in a fun way about some of our attractions or hotels or whatever? I think it could be a fun place to explore, but
Yeah.
not without risk either, right? You're going to have some detractors because I know when people have done these sort of more brutally honest campaigns, they don't. Not everyone sort of gets the joke, and not everyone sort of can see beyond the initial reaction to see the net benefit. But
Well, this is why education is so important, right? Like, we can't do something like this, like what she's done, without
mhm,
bringing the stakeholders along. But they need to understand if the marketing equation has changed, like I just described it, the stakeholders need to understand that. So, for example, if you are extremely trustworthy, but you're not getting any attention, you're not going to have success. If you're
mhm,
getting a ton of attention, but people can't trust what you say about the destination, you're still not going to have success. And
mhm,
so it's the combination of those two, and you got to have the stakeholders bought in on the idea that look, these are the two things that we're going to work on. We want to be able
mhm,
to get as much attention as possible, and we want people to trust what we're saying. And if we can do that, we're going to
mhm.
have success. And I think that's the only way to get buy off on some of these kind of wild and crazy ideas.
Yeah. I think the other thing, and if I was being devil's advocate with your equation, is you got to probably have a directional component to the attention. We can all get attention pretty easily, right? With, by going negative or by going sensational. It's what the media has really been doing dramatically over the last several years. And so I think you as destination marketers, it may be implied that it's positive attention, but we probably, for that equation to be universally accepted, you may need some kind of directional caveat in there. Positive
Hmm.
attention, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that, Stuart, because
Okay.
um, honestly, I think, and Cracker Barrel may be a great example of this. They got a ton of attention with their rebrand, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that attention didn't lead them to building trust with the marketplace. And in fact, they said the marketplace is wrong in their
Mm-hmm.
response
Mm-hmm.
to what happened. So that didn't build trust.
It's very
If
Steve
you,
Jobs of them, isn't it? Like to say that they know better than the consumer.
yes,
Worked out
very
okay for
Steve
him.
Jobs of them. But I'll give you an example of a brand that's gone after Cracker Barrel that I think you'd find interesting. Have you seen what Steak and Shake did? Have you guys
No,
kept an eye on that at all?
no.
So Steak and Shake suddenly, who I've never seen on Twitter my entire professional life or life at all, and it's a brand that I've only known in passing, but I've known very little about. All of a sudden, when Cracker Barrel came out, they are calling Steak and Shake, the brand is calling for the resignation of the CEO, is talking about the loss of trust that Cracker Barrel has experienced with their audience. And if you go in on it, all of a sudden it's like Steak and Shake has suddenly tried to enter into the zeitgeist of a conversation they were never a part of before. But I would be really interested in seeing, and I don't have the answer. I'd be really interested in seeing what the impact has been on Steak and Shake, because what I think is happening, I think they clearly recognize that they have crossover between their audience and Cracker Barrel's audience, and this is an acquisition, a market share acquisition campaign to try to enter into the conversation and build trust with the people who have lost trust with Cracker Barrel. And I'm going to be fascinated to see how that shakes out.
Yeah,
It's
so
almost
I
like
do.
it's almost like they took from the Wendy's method of,
Mm-hmm.
like Wendy's intentionally everything that they post, like you do not want to be on the opposite end of that because it's always hilarious, but their whole fresh, never frozen, and specifically their social media accounts attacking, if not directly calling out McDonald's like every time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's almost like they took a page out of that and played defense, but aggressive defense, you know?
Yeah, it's there's a phrase that I love. We've talked about a lot internally. It's like a social account should be a citizen of the world, right? They should have opinions on things within reason. And yeah, I don't know if shake and bake is shake and steak, not shake and bake. I'm
Steak and
thinking
shake.
Talladega Nights. Shake and steak have crossed the line to me, right? Because I don't know that it's calling for the resignation of a CEO. I'd have to see the context, obviously, right? I don't want to rush to judgment. We do that a little too much in our society, but um, like I think you got to know where the lines are on what you should weigh in on and what you shouldn't weigh in on it. But as a brand, I do think there's an opportunity to have a personality. Like Wendy's is obviously always the poster child. They play this sort of precocious younger sister really well on Twitter. But then if you go to Facebook and look at Wendy's, it's a very different experience. They play more of like a technically challenged older aunt or grandma, right? So they've sort of figured out the art of leaning into the audience based on the channel, and I think that's the nuance that a lot of destinations, but social channels miss out on. But you got to have courage and you
Yeah.
got to have creativity and you got to have a good team that can do it to be consistent. Because if you want to build trust, again, you got to be consistent with it. And it's really hard to be funny without crossing a line, especially when you're sort of punching down on people. That can that
Yeah.
can you can go to it in a dark place pretty quickly and end up with backlash.
This is why I want to see the results. And I don't want
Yeah.
to spend too much more time on this because I want to get to Christian's topic that he brought. So I would say to this point, I'm going to do some research and see what I can find out on how that went for Steak and Shake over the next couple
Hmm.
of months, and I'll report
Yeah.
back.
Well, and also how's Cracker Barrel doing overall, right? And how were they doing before the logo? I think a lot of people will point to the logo as a problem, but they were changing their stores and losing their clientele long before this logo
Yeah.
debacle, right? That was the impetus for the logo. And so I think it's sort of like, are we missing the actual real cause of their challenges and focusing on something that we can see and touch in the logo? I mean, regardless of what you think about the logo, they did get a lot of attention. They just lost the trust of their consumer, right? That's where your formula sort of proves that they didn't get it right. All right, let's shift gears. So, Christian, I'm going to hand the floor to you, and I'm really fascinating in this topic. I think it would help if you sort of started with like a little bit about your background and where you came, because you've only been in the industry for 3 or 4 years. So, you've sort of seen an analogy to what happened in the past as maybe it's a cautionary tale for what's happening now in our space. So, floor is yours, my friend. I'll let you sort of introduce the topic and give us your thesis.
Yeah, yeah. So the topic being, um, is the media, specifically, I would say like the news media, um, a warning industry for what we're seeing in the DMO space early on. It makes sense to me just because my background is in news media. I'm not new to marketing. I am new to tourism, which is how I found you guys and the conference we were at. I try to attend as much and learn as much as I can because, like Stuart, when you're only 3 or 4 years into a new industry, you try to consume everything and you don't necessarily want to try new things just from your own perspective without knowing historical context of what others in the same space have done too, because you don't want to waste time making the same mistakes if you can prevent it. And so you try just learning as much as you can and listening. And um, coming from the news media, there's so many interesting, if not parallels, just complete opposites that make it actually a great transition. So if anybody's actually like one, if you're looking to hire somebody in the tourism space, look at picking off somebody from your local news outlet because they have all the transferable skills of they're great communicators, they're great writers, they're storytellers first and foremost. They're great conversationalists. Um, their deadlines are daily, which is something that I think in the tourism world, sometimes that scares us a little bit. We might think that it's fast paced, but it's not daily news of go find your three sources, get this out before your competition does. Like it's really aggressive. Um, but in coming from that space, I mean, my original interest was film. Like I'm from a small town in the middle of America. I love cameras and movies and TV shows, and I was like, man, that's what I want to do. But I think I was wrongly convinced that to find jobs in that field, you got to go to LA or New York or Chicago or Atlanta, and that wasn't in it for me. So I still was looking for that mentality of I still want to tell stories. What can I do here? That led me into looking at journalism, and in my university that I went to here in St. Joseph, Missouri Western State University, they were actually really on the forefront of this at the time. Um, they had a degree called Convergent Media, which was basically modernized journalism to cover all the basis of media. So, yes, you're a storyteller, but you got to do it with a camera, video and photo. You got to know how to do it online. You got to have conversations and make a presence on social media. You're really stretched among all these different platforms. So you're kind of diversifying your reach or your portfolio as a brand of yourself as a journalist. But I ended up going that commercial production route. So I saw it from the promotions and the marketing angle, which is how I got to where I am today. But in seeing the warning signs, so I had worked for a newspaper, I'd worked for a TV station, a little bit on the West Coast, most recently in Kansas City. So both small and large markets. And it's the same everywhere I went. It was scalable from the smallest little newspaper all the way to a big, top 30 TV market in the US, and everybody is burnout. Everybody's depressed. Everybody is looking for the next thing. They're underpaid, they're overworked, underappreciated, and it's the remnants of what's been gone. So the glory days of the newspaper basically ended in the 90s when the internet came and search became a real thing that people could search on their own. Commerce exchanges with like eBay and Craigslist pretty much all but killed the Craigslist, or it killed their classifieds. Their money was in classifieds. And ads started pulling away. Um, Fast forward to broadcast TV, the same, but I would say more in social media and the influencer culture, just because they were individual brands as TV personalities. Whether you're a reporter, anchor, meteorologist, you were kind of a local celebrity in the day up until that modern day kind of smartphone era where you don't need to check in for what's happening in your local sports team or your weather because you got it on your phone. So they've kind of lost their celebrity status or their influencer status, which wasn't necessarily a term at the time, but they were local celebrities. They take pictures with people, and so their glory days are kind of back there too. And I've not been deep into radio, but everybody I've talked to in the radio industry says the same thing, but in the streaming culture. That naturally, like you guys know, I mean, podcasts completely changed the effectiveness of radio with their talk shows and their hosts. That if they didn't diversify early on and start a podcast with their talk shows to at least have a platform available for people that aren't listening at this exact time on this exact day, then they were gone. And so the warnings ultimately coming, you might be asking, how does that correlate with where we are with the DMO space? Specifically, when you look at the DMO space with AI now and what it's able to do, it's putting us in a position like those media outlets where they lost control of being the content curator for that product. And so it basically is become like the Wild West of we're not the go-tos anymore. Maybe we still are just because AI is sourcing us and they're sourcing our sites. But I mean, what's to stop, somebody just in their garage that just knows AI really well? They come up with their own, here's the places to go and see, and AI pulls from that, and it's inaccurate, it's uninformed, it's hostile, it's negative, like it's everything that you don't want. But if you lose control, you can't really get that back. And that's what we've seen with newspapers, TV, radio. They're just slowly declining at different rates, but they are just trying to tread water, and it's affected their work culture, cuts, budgets, everything. The main difference, obviously, being so many of us are somewhat protected by tax dollars. You know, it's never permanent when you're protected by tax dollars, but it does help compared to that corporate world of broadcast. So that's what I'm coming with, I guess.
So let me try to restate what I think I heard and sort of join some of those dots. So to me, what you're saying is there have been disruptions, technological disruptions that have created consumer behavior shifts, right? Throughout history. This has always been the case. And we could
Yeah,
probably even go back further than you started, but you
you can.
started with
Yeah.
newspapers, and you're saying that the internet and search specifically and things like Craigslist and eBay disrupted newspapers. You're saying that social media shifted people's attention away from broadcast TV towards more individual content creators. And you're saying with radio, more on demand, bespoke, niche content replaced that. So in every case, like regardless of the fact they're all media, what you're really saying is people were consuming something and then they shifted to something that was maybe more bespoke in every case, right? It was something that they had more control in. It was more of a conversation, a relationship that they could have. So they're getting more granular, more niche, but more in control. And what you're saying is that in this case, you believe AI and the ability for people to control their experience through a generative chat conversation with AI means that where consumers are getting their information from related to travel is going to shift, and we may not be that source of truth, just like newspapers are no longer the source of truth, or TV or radio is no longer the source of truth. I got to tell you, I agree 100% with that. 100%. I think this is the sort of the canary in the coal mine we've been talking about for a long time. Like when we talk about, will the hotel, will the destination website be relevant? Will paid media be as effective? This is exactly what we've been talking about. I just don't think we've contextualized it in the way you have before. But Adam, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it because I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, we can go back to the beginning of time, right? Or at least modern time, as far as what has actually worked to, because the goal is to get consumers to do something, right? That's the ultimate goal. We want them to visit our destination. We want them to make a purchase, whatever, right? Well, it started out the consumer had zero control. And over time, every technological advantage that we've received has given the customer more control. And that's the reason it's been adopted, is because the customer wants more control of their experience, everything from their media decisions to the purchases that they make. And every time there's a major technological shift that continues to go towards more control for the individual user or the consumer, you have a cohort of organizations that try to hold on to the past and continue to operate like they did before, and they don't realize that the consumer has already shifted. And that happens at every step of the way. And so if I was a destination listening to this, I'm not even talking from an advertising perspective at this point. All my decisions would be based on giving the consumer what they've clearly demonstrated over the last 100 years that they want. Every time there's been a shift in media and technology, they want more control. So I think the destination, if we can provide more opportunities for the individual consumer or user to feel like they have control over the experience or over the content that they consume or whatever it is, we can still be on the front of that wave as opposed to trying to hold on to the things. And my opinion here would be interruption based marketing is definitely an effort to try to hold on to control that the consumer has already abandoned. And everything needs to shift towards something that the individual user or consumer has control over. And I think time, if we look back over time, every single shift that's happened is evidence that that's going to continue.
Yeah, I mean, progress is undefeated, right? It's literally like the people that have tried to hold on are and infinite right now. Like no one's ever stuck to their guns and said, even though everything's changing around me, I'm going to keep doing the same thing and being successful at that strategy. And so I do think it's a big warning to us as destination marketers. Now, I do think that word control is we need to unpack a little bit, because what does that really mean? It means they want choice, they want flexibility, they want context, they want personalization, they want something that's relevant to them right? It's not just about being able to press the buttons, because honestly, people are lazy. They don't really
Yep.
want to press buttons, right? So when we say control, it's not that they're necessarily holding the remote control and pressing the buttons. It's that
It's not
they want
manual
the
control.
Netflix algorithm to tell them what to watch next, right? And that it be the right thing for them to watch next. So we're not saying that they want to control
So
it in the practical
you're saying
sense.
something interesting though, Stuart, because what they actually want is the illusion of control.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We want to think like we're in control. I mean, isn't that the secret to every marriage, every happy marriage? It is in mine. Like when my wife wants me to think that I'm making the decisions, but really she's primed me for the last 2 weeks to make me want to think that those are my decisions, you know?
I was worried you were headed the opposite
No, I'm
direction
not
there, and
going
I was
in
like,
another way
"Ugh,
with control of marriage. I saw your
we got
face.
to get
No.
out of here."
I'm keeping it PG, but no, I'm like humans throughout history, right? We've wanted to feel like we're in power, we're in control, but ultimately we want the results to be ones that make us feel good, that hit the right dopamine receptors and stuff like that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
Christian, have you tried to share this like with your peers, with folks in your team or outside of the industry?
I
And what's the
have,
response?
and yeah, and you know what's interesting is even with my team, I got somebody in the office here who I actually worked with about 10 years ago at said newspaper, who basically just stayed and grew within it and ultimately became the assistant news director. And my thinking was, I gotta get them into tourism, because they know the destination extremely well when they're in the news. I mean, they have contacts with the police and the fire and everything at that level as well. Not only, your city and your county employees, so they have relationships established if they've already built a career as a good journalist. They're already respected in the community. So when you can pull somebody like that, not only are you pulling all their contacts and their connections as well, but you're pulling the respect that they have as a storyteller, and they realize that, oh, this person's about to help the quality of life sector, not so much the if it bleeds, it leads mentality of
Hmm.
news. Um, and so our office totally gets it. We see it. We're a not necessarily a small destination, because there's obviously some really small destinations of one person teams and volunteers and things, and we have a decent sized team, but we are a small media market. So there's 211 TV markets in the U.S., all ranked number one to 211. One being New York, L.A., and it goes down from there. So we're like 201 out of 211. So there's only like 9 or 10 markets smaller than us when it comes to TV markets. And that's just because of our location. Like we're nestled within Kansas City, Des Moines, and Omaha. We're just like this own
Hmm.
little dot. So it made sense for our market because it was a perfect parallel with our destination. That station pretty much only covers our destination. But when I talk to your point on throughout the industry, you'd actually be really surprised at how many people I've spoken with who are former journalists,
Hmm.
former reporters. So I know that others have caught on as well, and it's almost like this little coalition of like, how much happy are you right now? Because you're literally going from one of the most depressing industries out there, and I don't think I'm alone in saying that, to one of the most positive. Like you were saying earlier,
Hmm.
Stuart, like tourism is so fun. Like you talk about nothing but the positives and the joyful things in your community to people who actually want to be here.
Hmm.
Day in and day out, like that is a positive thing that you can take home with you and feel good about. And on the news side, you feel like the best days are behind you and it's only going to get worse. You're going to ask to get more done on not any more pay. Also, you got to train this other person because turnover is ridiculous. It's a really bad environment for employees right now, and they're really struggling. One thing in particular, it's a very competitive culture, and I think in a corporate world, your station can get sold at any time. It doesn't matter how good you perform or how bad you perform. So there's no incentives to being great at your job other than just keeping your job. So you almost in that field, you want to just go unnoticed. You want to be just good enough to get things done, get your job done, go home. If you excel too much, you get noticed by higher ups. You get noticed by higher ups, you get sold. Um,
Yeah.
Things like that happen, or you just get cut because it's corporate and there's big budgets and they'll just cut you.
Yeah,
Um,
or your incentive is you want to go to a bigger market, right? We see a lot of
yes.
folks, Myrtle Beach is sort of in the
Yep.
middle of that 200 stations, and we see a lot of people, first job out of college is here, and then they're just working up their resume to get to go from like 100 to
Yeah.
50 or whatever it is. So
Yep.
other than hiring journalists, which I agree with 100%, I've had a lot of success. I think they have a lot of the skills that are very
Yeah.
transferable to your point, right attitude, and they thrive in tourism. So definitely look to hire journalists and people beyond journalists. Like we've had some
Yeah.
success recently hiring a meteorologist that was really effective. Um, but what are some so we could theoretically go 5 years into the future or 10 years into the future, whatever. In tourism could be in the same position now that you're saying newspapers or TV is in today, right? And so, how do we
Mhm.
prevent that? What should we've said on the show before, the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, but the next best time is today. So, what trees should we be planting today to try to prevent that inevitable eventuality?
Yeah. I think number one would probably be being willing to tell the stories that nobody else will or has. The reporters, the journalists, the ones out there that are still doing well, they're doing well because of how connected they are in their community, and those broadcasters and newspapers, they can't let them go. Like their publication or channel, whatever it is, it's almost hanging on that person. Just as an individual, that people recognize that station because of that person. And it's because the work they're doing is that they're so connected to, say it's sports, they know all the coaches, they know all the kids know them, all the kids will even turn on the TV just because they're knowing that they're going to be in the highlights that night. So they're still getting ratings in different generations just because of their reach in their community, that it doesn't necessarily matter the platform as much as are people in the community considering you as a trustworthy um, person to tell these stories. And so I
It's
think if
almost
you're
like there should
telling
be a
those,
formula, like I don't know, awareness and trust equals success, something like that.
it should be, it should, you know what's funny about that? I will say this too, because I think it's relevant for us, but so I was in promotions and marketing for those stations. We had big consultants that did stuff all over the country that, in that space, everyone knew the consultants' names. I'm not going to call them out here, but everybody that was big and had a budget hired the same consultants. And they all said, do not say the word trust in your commercials. That if you have to tell the people that you're
Oh yeah, for sure.
trustworthy, you're untrustworthy.
Yep.
Yeah.
You've got
Yep.
to show it. You can't tell people that you're trustworthy. And so, us that did the promotions for a while, anytime we see, the number one station you can trust, we're like, oh my gosh, we're
Yeah.
falling over because we're like, you're crushing your
Hmm.
own
Yeah.
views
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah, you got to
Um,
earn trust. It's something the
I
behavior leads to. It's
yep.
not something you can state. Go ahead,
I
Adam.
want to chime in on this because I want to talk specifically to the economics of it because and I'm going to tie what you're talking about with the news media into the destination marketing organizations as well because I think there's a very clear parallel. I'm glad you're drawing it. So number one is in the economic dynamics that you just described, ad revenue is going down. There's less budget to pay people, so the people are overworked. Their commitment to the quality of their work goes down because no matter how well they do, they're not going to have any control over whether or not the station gets bought and they lose their job and all this stuff, right? So you end up in this environment where, yes, you may have the attention, but the trust is continuing to dwindle.
Mhm.
Now, if you take that and you compare it to the economics of the destination marketing industry, if we do the same thing and continue to try to generate attention by only highlighting bits and pieces of the destination that we feel like represent the destination the best, and we allow other people to tell our story. And a great example of what you said, Christian, is I've got a guy that's listened to my destination marketing podcast for years, and he started out as a real estate agent. We're talking a lot about real estate agents today, apparently, and after listening to my show, he recognized that he didn't feel like the destination was doing a good enough job of building a community. And he felt like if he leveraged the tactics I was describing, he could actually circumvent that process. He started a podcast called the Discover Virginia podcast. And he is now one of the key voices when people are looking to visit Virginia. They're going to his podcast, and guess who gets to sell them a home? And he has built trust by giving an authentic coverage of the destination. And he'll say things like, don't go to this restaurant, it sucks, because he doesn't have anything to lose. His only currency is trust, right? And so
Yep.
when you look at that, that's what it opens up the door for, is the destination to lose its credibility as the key source of trust in the community. And once a destination loses trust, the economics will fall apart for destinations, just like it did for newspapers and other traditional media outlets. And of course, there's exceptions. There's traditional media outlets that still are working very well. I've had several of them on my podcast. So I'm not saying they're all dead, but if you look at it scalable to the entire industry, the economics are falling apart. And the same thing's going to happen to destinations if we don't use this equation of getting attention and then building trust with the audience. They'll book trips, they'll continue to book trips. But if we don't, the economics are going to fall apart.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And to the workforce side of it, kind of going back to when you were saying, the ratings are falling, that they're being asked to do more, they're not getting paid more because the ratings are tied to the dollars, so on and so forth. It creates a fear culture because once cuts happen, like you're now working in a culture of fear, that any day could be your last day working there. And that hostile environment doesn't generate any good work if it's a fear culture. I'm not a big believer in that. But, in the competitive corporate world, like they lean into that sometimes. And it's not what I would suggest. But, every young journalist, because once you start getting that turnover and you start getting college kids, it's their first job and they're on the desk and they're nervous. And, you hear the community coming after them saying, I don't even know anybody on the station anymore. They don't feel connected. I tell every single one of them anytime anybody interviews me about something in our events and things like that. I say like you got to start volunteering and getting out there and start serving the community. And when people get to know you and ask what you do, like, oh, I'm a reporter for this, they'll follow you because you matter to them. Like you're a part of their organization, you serve them, you volunteer with them, you're on their board or committee, whatever it is. Like you got to get involved and build your own connection, or else they're just going to assume that you're just using that destination as a platform to just get to some bigger destination or some bigger market, some bigger job. You've got to show that you actually care and you're trying to make an actual change in the community to get that trust.
Yeah, that starts with hiring, right? Because one of the questions we ask is when people are coming for job interviews is we try to dig into how much they care about the community already, right? Because you might have the best resume in the world, you might have the best experience and the best aptitude and attitude, but if you don't care about the community, you're never going to be really successful in this job. And so we always ask questions about what's your favorite thing to do in Myrtle Beach? What do you love the most about Myrtle Beach? What do you wish was better about Myrtle Beach? We really dig into, are they passionate? Do they care about the destination? If they do, then there's a much higher chance we're going to hire them. If they don't, there's zero chance we're going to hire them. So I think that's important. But I want to zoom out a little bit and sort of talk about, we talked a lot, we sort of meandered back and forth between like the employee side and in the sort of strategy side. And I'd like to zoom back out to the strategy for the last couple of minutes and just think about what does all this conversation, let's boil it down to like, what does it mean for us as destination marketers? What bets should we be making on the future? We've talked a lot about building trust. And Adam, I'm going to sort of throw this one at you a little bit, but
Yeah.
The devil's advocate in me would say, a lot of DMOs talk about authenticity, right? We've seen the word authentic at every conference for the 4 years I've been here, certainly. But we talk about authenticity, and then we'll talk about, well, let's hire actors to play these roles in our commercials to pretend that they're having a great time at this restaurant.
Yeah.
We cherry pick the stories we tell to present ourselves in the best possible light. We actively avoid, and even try to hide some of our blemishes, right? So for all the authenticity conversation, I've not seen a destination, maybe with the exception of Oslo, really go out there on a limb and say, here's who we really are, warts and all, right? And I understand why they don't. I mean, it makes me a little nervous just even thinking about the prospect of, do I want to talk about some of the negative sides, some of the monikers that Myrtle Beach has, and how there's this stigma associated with them. Part of me wants to lean into it, but part of me is also like, well, I do that and I just get one elected official that's disgruntled with it, and then it's all over, you know? So how do you
Yeah.
respond to that?
Well, so I think there's a lot of different options. What you're identifying is the key problem or the key barrier that destinations have to not be able to do this, right? And there's several different ways to look at it. I would say one of the key opportunities that a destination has if they're trying to solve this problem is if you're afraid to be the mouthpiece, then you need to find people who can be the mouthpiece that already have a community or an audience that they've built. So there's a big difference between Visit Myrtle Beach, talking about this awful tragedy that happened in X location. I'm making this up. There were no ever in the history of Myrtle Beach any awful tragedies that have ever happened. I'm just kidding. But I went so far down that joke that I kind of lost my
You're like
train of
doubling
thought.
your joke,
Yeah.
tripling your joke,
Yeah, I
backing
went
away from the
way
joke.
too far. So Myrtle Beach, you know, if you're the mouthpiece of talking about a tragedy or a blemish on the destination or whatever, that's a dangerous place for you to live. If you hire a content creator who has already demonstrated the ability to generate attention, to come in and tell that story, you are not the direct mouthpiece, but you've still funded the ability to get attention. So then the question is, how do you, if you bring in a content creator that's telling a story that's not terribly favorable to Visit Myrtle Beach, how do you help connect the dots so that the people that come from that attention can now build trust with the destination? Maybe you're pulling people from that audience in some way, shape, or form to say, now here's the changes that have been made, and here's where that whatever tragedy, blemish, whatever it is, has turned into today. And so what I would like to imagine is that destinations can leverage other people to tell the story. The destination will amplify that and then draw the connection that allows it to still have a positive output. I think that's a great way to add a layer of defense and still get your stakeholders on board that Visit Myrtle Beach is helping get attention and then also helping leverage that into a positive relationship with the end consumer. I think there's more ways to skin that cat, right? But that's one of the
That's maybe a
options that
good
I would
first
provide.
step. Yeah. So if we
Yeah.
go back all the way to, like, I think it was episode 3 when we had Sarah Peter on the show, and she sort of changed my thinking on something, because I've always thought of us as sort of the guide to the story or the storyteller of the destination. She sort of made the distinction, saying, no, sometimes we're just the incubator for the story, right, or the catalyst for the story. And I sort of agree with that, because we don't have to be telling the story or even guiding the people that necessarily tell the story, but we may need to nudge people in the direction. So I'll sort of end with this, and then we'll let Christian sort of give his final thoughts. But Myrtle Beach has just kicked off a new program. We're calling it the Creator Collective. And so this past week, well, we're doing a big campaign right now with Matador Network, where we brought in 8 content creators from outside of our market, and they're sort of sharing content. They're here for a month, and they're sharing content while they're here for a month. And they're artists, they're musicians, they're filmmakers. They're not like quote unquote influencers. They're real content creators. But we took this as an opportunity to sort of bring together content creators that are in our community. And so we had an event this past week at Crooked Hammock, which is a local brewery here. It's amazing. If you're ever in Myrtle Beach, you should certainly check it out.
I haven't tried that one yet. I need to.
But we brought in 14, I think, content creators, foodies, fashion people, lifestyle people, just a variety range of people that we've identified as local people that are creating good content and building audience. And we said, hey, we want to have a relationship with you. It's not a transaction. We're not here to say, hey, we're going to pay you to produce content. That's not what this is. This is about, you guys care about this community. We care about this community. You want to see this community thrive. We want to see this community thrive, right? And we want to be a catalyst for you to grow your audience, but also continue to do the work that you're doing. And so we had them like opt in to a program called the Creator Collective. And throughout the year, we're going to help them, connect them with people, get them access to events and things. We're not paying them, right? This is a relationship, not a transaction, but we're going to help them do a better job telling their stories. We're not going to tell them what stories to tell, but we're also going to leverage them when we need things, right? So it might be a positive thing like, hey, for this next month, we've got a food truck festival coming up at the end of the month. So we really would love for you guys to talk about this topic for a while. Like, go try out the food trucks. Here's the list of them. Go do content on them. And so we can sort of start to shift the narrative and the zeitgeist by providing them proactively with content ideas.
Yep.
But then also on the negative side, to your point, like crisis communication, one of the biggest challenges we have as a community is when like a storm, a hurricane's coming towards us, it's all over the media for like the week leading up to it. Like, is it going to hit? What damage is it going to do? The speculation. And it's in all our regional markets. Like, if you're in Charlotte, that's all you hear about leading up to a storm is Myrtle Beach is about to get hit with a hurricane. And we see bookings like dwindle. Then the hurricane passed, inevitably there was maybe some damage, but usually not nearly as catastrophic as people think, right? At least in my time here in Myrtle Beach, it never has been. And we're open for business the next day, and it's usually beautiful weather, but no one's telling that story. The media certainly isn't telling that story because there's no incentive for them to say, hey, Myrtle Beach is fine. It didn't get a scratch. Go visit there. So we're going to leverage these guys as part of that megaphone to tell people Myrtle Beach is open, and we'll give them ideas and have them go do live videos out on the beach or out around. So I think one of the defenses to this inevitable problem that Christians brought to us, that we're sort of this pending Damocles sword that's already hit traditional media, is for us to build trust in coalitions and collaborations in our community with multiple voices, so that we all have a collectively a greater voice and a greater influence on our future. So that's one of the things that we're doing in Myrtle Beach. I just figured
I like it.
kind of share it with the audience. Christian, we're about out of time, man. But did you get what you wanted out of this show? Did it live up to your expectations? And are there any final thoughts you want to, or pearls of wisdom you want to leave the destination with?
Sure. Yeah. No, I loved it. It's a fun subject for me. I mean, not just the media side, but just, I love tourism. I could tell right away that it's where I'm supposed to be. I have so much fun with it. The people I talk to, um, it's the people that you meet. It's great. I mean, the the ability to actually move the needle in your community can't be understated. There's not very many jobs out there where you can legitimately move the needle on the success of your community, and
Mm-hmm.
this does. We know that, and naturally, I don't want to see it go down the same path of media outlets and the troubles that they've had. I don't want to see. I don't want to have to be able to tell somebody in 20 years, like, oh, you should have seen it, 25 years ago. It was a different place, because that's what these longtime journalists are doing now. But
Mm-hmm.
to stay on top of it, I mean, just because us as marketers, we like to compare things. We like to see what are the good markets doing well. We like to borrow, if not just straight steal, those good ideas from a non-competing place, and say, I'm going to try it here. Um, I looked at, hey, what's a different industry that I can borrow from and take from and learn from, and if not the successes, then like the failures, where did they miss so we don't? And again, those are, telling the stories that nobody else will. Yeah, being ingrained in the community. Um, Definitely don't hesitate with new technology, because that was the catalyst for all their failures, was they hesitated when a disruptor came. And maybe this is the hot take that you're probably wishing I brought up sooner, because it's up for debate, but I would say don't listen to everyone in the community. Um, yeah, everyone can be heard, but not everyone has a great idea for what needs to be done. Specifically, I'm thinking like for our destination, downtown, everybody has a opinion about what should be done with downtown. And when you talk to some people who have not been down there for 30 years, so they already don't even know what the downtown is that needs to be fixed, but you find out that what they really want is a corner that has a Target and a Starbucks and a Walgreens and Chick-fil-A. That's what they really want. And no matter what you do to downtown, other than take its soul and what it is, you're not going to make that person happy. You kind of just have to move on and live. That's not the community member that you're needing to really listen to. The ones that you need to listen to are the ones that are volunteering, serving, trying to help, donating, the ones that are really trying to survive uh, that important piece of town that makes you truly different than every other destination.
What a preview for our next discussion with Christian when he comes back.
Oh, wow. I got to
Yeah,
work on
that was
it.
great. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I bet we've got a lot of destinations out there nodding their head because that whole downtown debate is one I've heard countless times, including within my own community. So,
Yeah.
Christian, thank you for being here today. This has been a pleasure. Adam, you have any final thoughts to leave our audience with?
No, I thought it was a great discussion. And, in all my time, I haven't connected with Christian Mengel. And so it's great to do so. So, Christian, thank you for being here.
You
Really
being an
appreciate it.
eHarmony guy instead?
Yeah, always an eHarmony guy, but my brand loyalty has shifted for sure
There
after
we
this
go.
discussion
There we
today.
go.
Christian, if they want to find you, where can they do that?
stjomo.com, stjomo.com. St. Joseph, Missouri, man. We're just 45 minutes north of Kansas City. If people are like, where is that? We're as they say, we're where the Pony Express started and Jesse James ended. So it's where
Oh,
he was
wow.
shot and killed. So
Wow.
in the modern culture, we host Chiefs training camp, the Kansas City Chiefs every summer, and so we get
Nice.
all the Kelsey fans, the Taylor Swift. It's a big deal here. I know it's a big deal everywhere, the Swifties, but here I think it's a little more serious being on the outside metro of Kansas City.
Great shameless plug for your destination. I've never been, but you've made me want to go now because I'm a huge Swiftie.
There we go.
JK. Adam, if they want to find you, where can they do that?
Adam at thebrandrevolt.com, or you can find me on mytourismiq.com. Everybody go join that. That's it.
Everybody. Is that a demand?
Everybody.
Is that a demand or is that a request?
It is a demand. However, I still want you to have the illusion of control. So please go.
Of your own free will. You can find me at stuart.butler at visitmyrtlebeach.com. Thank you for listening. And I think the one takeaway I have from this conversation is we got to continue to try to evolve, right? We got to meet the consumer where they are. And the alternative is there in black and white or no longer there in black and white because the newspapers are dead, So we have to do better tomorrow than we did today. So thank you everyone for listening. Until next time, this has been Destination Discourse.
Thanks, everybody.